Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we bring you the latest news, information and analysis on what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. In 2023, there was a lot of talk in the run-up to the BRICS summit in Johannesburg about whether BRICS would announce a gold-backed currency. Now, I was skeptical and seems I was correct. I don't think it was something that the BRICS were ready to do. Now, that said, it's not something that is not going to happen, and I think that gold will certainly have a way to play a role in the future, but just not just yet. Now, today, I'd like to focus on gold and particularly the relationship between Russia, gold, and China. And as you're aware, or some of you may not be, Russia and China, the two leading members of the BRICS, are also ranked number 1 and 2 in the mining of gold on an annual basis. Now, in 2023, China mined 370, or around 370 tons of gold, and Russia mined around 330. Now, that combined total of 700 tons was 25% of all the gold mined on the planet. And that's according to Metals Focus, which is the leading authority on precious metals worldwide. Now, on the Russian figures, I know they're accurate because I compiled them myself. I provide the information on precious metals in Russia to them. Now, both China and Russia have substantial gold reserves in their central banks, and have increased them substantially over the last decade, particularly Russia, as it's divested itself of its holdings in US dollars in either cash or US treasuries. Russia's gold reserves are around 2,300 tons, and officially, China has something similar, although I tend to think that they have substantially more than those officially reported, and it's probably nearer to 6,000 tons. And that might play a significant part in the future of the BRICS and its possible currency. Now, as I've said, both countries mine over 300 tons per year, and in the next few years, Russia will increase that figure to more than 400 tons and become number 1. Now, what I'd like to do in this video is explain how Russia has become one of the world's leading gold producers in only 2 decades. Now, in order to explain how Russia's gold industry is where it is today, it's necessary to describe its development over the last 2 decades. Now, when Vladimir Putin became president in 2000, the gold industry was relatively underdeveloped in world terms. Well, there was no doubt about its production potential. Soviet geologists had discovered gold deposits on a world-beaten scale. Most of it was located in the distant and underpopulated Siberian Far Eastern regions. This meant that access to the gold-producing areas was very challenging. Labour was relatively scarce and power supplies were very limited. The mechanisation of the industry had in fact been slowed back in the Soviet days by the availability of forced labour. So as a result, deposits such as Sukhoi log, which is the world's largest undeveloped, which is currently being developed, remained untapped due to the remoteness and the technical limitations. Now, by the end of the Soviet period, the majority of Russia's mining activity was still focused on the seasonal mining of alluvial deposits, rivers and streams, etc. During the 1990s, a shift towards lode mining was underway, and that was supported by the increasing availability of electricity at mining sites, although conditions are still challenging for the producers. Now, the cost of labour, electricity and transport, all of which were previously suppressed and subsidised by the Soviet government, were now borne by the enterprises operating in the most remote parts of the country, and that's where the costs are actually the highest. Now, the inflow of Western investment and technical know-how, moreover, was not immediate, and in the end, it was never actually widely available. Most potential investors avoided the industry for the same cost-related risks as before, and as well as the complicated Russian tax regime. As a result, even enterprises reorientated towards more profitable activities. Productivity remained low, and it was just at a quarter of the Western level in 1997. Overall, by 2000, the Russian gold industry remained seriously underdeveloped by world standards. And on one hand, it still had proven world-class reserves and considerable potential, but with the right level of investment, but its outlook was poor. Now, aggregate production of gold set to decline as costs increase, with limited foreign investment, which was focusing on new lode mining opportunities. But on the other hand, the state had, at some cost, decided to play a primarily strategic rather than export-oriented game, which is what happened with other mining organisations, which distinguishes it from the other sectors of mining. Under the new government, distinctions emerged in a way that the state managed the various natural resources. Most obviously, the Kremlin retained control over the oil and gas sector through the creation of national champions, the leaders being Rosneft, Transneft and Gazprom. State companies were headed by figures close to Putin, and they were entitled to the most important resources and assets in their respective sectors. Now, this was not formally the case in the metals and mining sectors, where the largest businesses remained in private hands, with the exception of Alrosa, which is the state diamond monopoly. Now, at the same time, these leading companies are like national champions, typically large, vertically integrated entities, which means that competition is informally suppressed, well, at least at the top of the industry, and good relations with the Kremlin are a prerequisite for survival. Now, in addition, some industries are sector dominant. Companies have emerged resembling national champions, and in the gold mining sector, it was Polis. Unlike other sectors of the mining industry, the gold mining sector was not structured around one or two dominant companies, like a Norilsk Nickel, who dominate in nickel, copper, palladium, platinum, or UMMC, which is major copper and zinc producer. Then that happened when Putin came to power. Moreover, the historical role played by small producers in Russia's Far East even today remains largely cut off from the country, but let alone the global supply chains. But they remain important and of considerable value in policymaking circles, both in the terms of production and economic development. Indeed, gold mining companies have often played a pioneering role in the regions, and they establish a presence in a remote area, which is then followed by infrastructure, jobs, and a major contribution through tax revenues to the regional development. Consequently, the industry has developed along its own fashion, albeit shaped by the wider industry trends. Nonetheless, the development of the industry became a government priority, and gold was listed amongst the state's strategic minerals. Moreover, the state played an important steering role, although in hindsight, the informal character of Putin's industrial policy has been more influential than any formal plan for the sector. Now, this is most obvious considering Putin's plans for reforming the 1992 law on the subsoil, which covers the terms and conditions for prospecting, appraising, exploring mining resources. Around 2000, many people complained that the laws were outdated and would need an overhaul to attract investors to the sector that had endured more than a decade of neglect. However, it was not until 2005 that a draft law reached the State Duma, the parliament, with a clearer definition of the rights of both the state and the subsoil users. It wasn't passed. In the end, the old law has been amended periodically as experience has required. Now, there are 5 general trends in the gold sector's development since 2000 that can be looked at, which distinguishes it from other mining sectors. Firstly, due to the remoteness of the location of the country's gold resources and the continuing importance of alluvial deposits, the industries remain relatively open to small-scale and seasonal producers, which when taken together make a considerable contribution to the national production figures. Around 20% of Russia's gold is produced alluvially. Now, secondly, foreign investors and to a great extent foreign equipment and technology have played a major part in the competitive landscape of the sector as it's developed. Well, not to the same extent as we might have envisaged in 2000. Some companies did raise capital by listing on foreign stock exchanges, but the main companies have always remained Russian and in the majority of their shareholding. Thirdly, the industry has continually attracted well-resourced investors from other sectors of Russian business. So much so that some of the largest stakeholders in the industry are better known for what they've done before they moved into gold. It's a case for Suleiman Kerimov, who made his securities major stake in Polis after making billions elsewhere. Other magnates are now involved in the gold industry today include those from steel, which is Alexei Mordashov, Nord Gold, nickel, Vladimir Potanin, property, Vladislav Svlidlov, and banking, the owners of Latin Bank. Consequently, and fourthly, the industry retains a level of openness and competitiveness, albeit with a level of intrigue at all levels, which is not immediately obvious when you look at the structure of the industry, i.e. the dominance of Polis. Now, mergers and acquisitions have remained an important feature of the sector. For instance, since entering the gold industry in 2019, possibly with the financial and strategic support from the state bank VTB, Svibilov has, according to some, built up a portfolio of stakes in several companies that collectively make him a top 5 gold producer, which is not obvious unless you take a close look at what's really going on. Fifthly, the gold sector continues to play an outsized role in some of Russia's remotest and poorest regions, which makes its development just as important in Siberia and the Far East as it is to the federal government. Now, according to the Russian Ministry of Natural Resources, Rosnedra, Russia's gold reserves are over 10,000 tons and are located in 6,059 deposits across the country. Of these, 600 are primary deposits, 439 are gold ore proper, and 181 are complex with multiple different ores. Nearly 5,500 are placer deposits. Now, regardless of the type, 85% are located in Siberia and the Far East, which, as I stated earlier, gives the gold mining industry a specific regional profile, albeit one spread over an enormous territory larger than most countries. In fact, it's about as larger than Europe. But it is a reflection of the development of the industry that the majority of the country's significant deposits are now licensed. Around 10% of the country's reserves remain unallocated to developers. Now, some 7 regions consistently produce at least 20 tons of gold each year. 3 of these regions, Krasnoyarsk Krai, Magadan Oblast, and the Republic of Sakha, which is Yakutia, accounted for over 50% of Russian production in 2021. Indeed, over the last decade, production has increased in all of Russia's gold mining regions, bar Amur, and although that region still produces about 20 tons a year. Overall, compared to the late 1990s, the gold industry has been transformed into one that's world-class in terms of production. Most of the production, moreover, is centered around a few major producers. Now, the 10 largest producers account for 70% of the country's production in 2023. However, as already mentioned, a unique role has been played by Polis, which accounted for over a quarter of the total production alone in 2023. If you add in Polymetal, the second largest company, these 2 top miners account for 40% of the production. Now, this trend continues down the list of producers. Polis produced 2.5 times the amount of gold as Polymetal, which produced in turn twice as much gold as Highland Gold and Petropavlovsk added together. And they are the 3rd and 4th largest producers. Now, these figures give you a sense of the importance of a few companies to the industry. And by extension, the central bank, which relies on Russian producers to support the strategic gold stockpiling, and it determines how much gold it gets exported. Nevertheless, the government continues to be ambitious. At the end of last year, Rosnedra stated that, all things being equal, gold production could exceed 450 tons during this decade, so by the end of the 2020s. Now, overall, the gold industry in Russia has developed from an underachieving sector in 2000 to one that's become one of the world's most productive and with a low cost extraction rate. It's amazing to see what it's achieved, and despite the many obstacles. And it does have some of the world's most important mines, Sukhoi Log, and a handful of the world's significant gold companies. Now, the structure, organisation and participants of the gold industry are dependent more on the state than international capital flows. Now, this structure is likely to prove resilient through the current crisis and rather than its weakness. Russian mining companies are a tough breed, and the gold sector's forebears were largely responsible for the expansion of the state into the remote parts of eastern Siberia and the Far East. And the industry has maintained pretty good production levels before through periods of extended economic downturn. However, all the same, after 2 decades of limiting the involvement of Western companies, the industry now faces the problem of the substitution of Western technology and equipment. But that shouldn't be a problem because it can be overcome with the assistance of Chinese partners and the development of localized production. Now, this is the first in a series I'm going to do on the Russian gold mining sector. So do like and subscribe. Visit our website, SCO BRICS Insight, for lots of interesting articles, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you for watching.